unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Depth, a production of Souls and Liberty, brought to you in partnership with MyPillow.com. During the spiritual insanity of the past 60 years, there was a quiet revolt developing against the Marxist takeover of the West. The counter-revolution, that's what it is, got its traction first in Catholic circles, among steady, unwavering, devout Catholics. And then, of course, they were joined by others who were of goodwill and plugged into authentic Catholic social teaching, as opposed to the social justice garbage that's sort of, we're gaslighted about that's Catholic social teaching. Not so much. That counter-revolution, for that's what it is, has now exploded onto the American political scene, and it's more than just ascendant. It is front and center. From the U.S. Supreme Court to many in Trump's inner circle, as well as cabinet nominees and various appointees, the Catholic-led revolution is now at the center of U.S. politics. What's being revealed as well is the civil war within the Catholic Church, where liberal, weak, or downright heretical bishops have held sway for a very long time. They populated chanceries and seminaries and parishes and religious orders with equally weak men who viewed the faith established by the Son of God personally as a means to undo Western civilization, beginning in the Church. They weaponized Catholic theology and perverted the spirit of it to institute radical change across America and then, of course, by extension, every corner of the globe. It all started in the church decades before sweeping across the cultural landscape. It's why they all caved, completely folded in the face of the sexual revolution of the 1960s. They'd been prepared for that folding a few decades before. Some of them actually embraced that evil at the time, and today's weak bishops were all seminarians back in the 1960s and 70s, and they simply laid aside their faith to welcome the new zeitgeist. When it all finally caught up to them, it cost tens of millions of Catholic souls and billions in financial payouts for sex abuse crimes by them and their horribly formed clergy. Remember about all of that. They lied. They distorted the truth. They lawyered up. They re-abused victims by the thousands and signed God knows how many secret settlements to avoid the truth coming out. So, Catholics opposing them in the political arena should not just be excused, but actually applauded for their opposition to the scoundrel bishops and their minions all over the church, hiding behind a distinctly liberal and therefore insufficient reading of the church's teachings on immigration, as well as all kinds of other policy matters. The good news? Most of these errant bishops are on their way out, thank God. Retiring, aging out, dying. The generational change is more than afoot. It's happening. And while that is happening, a much more robust faith is emerging and taking its rightful place, first in the church and then going into the culture. The Son of God, the incarnate eternal Logos, cleansed the temple of its financial and moral corruption first, and then sent the apostles out to convert the world. Truly, I will be with you all days, even unto the consummation of the world. Seems like what's old is new again. Joining us now to talk about more of this, his thoughts on all of it, the sort of the Catholic-led revolution and how it's all playing out and like the details and going on in Washington, D.C. It's nuts. It's crazy. It's nuts. Is our very own Stephen Wynne, coming to us from Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas. Stephen.
Born in Kansas City, Missouri, currently reside on the Kansas side of the state line. Thank you, though, for the distinction. Most people, they miss that. It's very important to us Kansas Cityans.
I bet it is. It is. I don't think a lot of people actually understand just the geography. Now, this is the topic of the show, but Kansas City sits, and straddles both sides of the river. And is there much of a distinction between the two cultures, depending on whether you're in Missouri or Kansas? In Kansas City.
Really right. It's actually not so much, but it's a kind of a fascinating glimpse at history, American history. There's of course, Kansas and Missouri were very different during the time of the Civil War. Both were on the side of the Union. Missouri was a slave state. Kansas was not. And there's actually bad blood between the two that even exists to this day, basically. It can be traced all the way back to then. So Missourians will bristle whenever someone inadvertently says, oh, Kansas City in Kansas, the big city that you always hear about with the Chiefs and all the cultural amenities. That's on the Missouri side. The Kansas side is mainly suburban.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if the Missourians are upset, maybe they should change it to Missouri City. Oh, wait, there already is a Missouri City.
There is. Here is actually. Yeah.
All right, Stephen, let's talk a little bit about this Catholic-led revolution first. It's causing a massive DC shakeup, which, of course, is the point. And, there's two different things here. There's the theological part of this, which is the evangelist side of faithful Catholics presenting the glory of the Catholic faith. And, that worked, for example, in the case of J.D. Vance and quite a number of other people who looked at it and said, this makes sense. This seems to plug into the world better than what I used to believe. And, of course, that's the story of practically every conversion we hear today. Then there, of course, is the other side, which is the world part of it, which is with these Catholic principles and, the obeisance to natural law and all of that informs policy decisions and political programs and all of that. Just that part, for the moment, lay aside the theological stuff, just that part is causing Marxist, communist, Democrat, deep state, uniparty heads to explode all over Washington, D.C., and it is a glory to behold.
It is, yes, and it's so fascinating to watch all of this unfold. You really see the fingerprints of this new mindset, this Catholic political ideal. It's popping up everywhere. Last weekend Trump went down to North Carolina. He argued that perhaps we should get rid of FEMA. Perhaps that when disaster strikes a state, the state should take care of it. I mean, that's whether he knew it or not. He's arguing from the principle of subsidiarity, basically. Then wherever some issue, some problem can be taken care of at the local level, the smallest level possible, you should do that. And of course that makes sense. It's far better to
on that point for to kind of keep kind of making the bridge back and forth between temporal and theological. That principle of subsidiarity comes from Jesus himself. When you have a problem, a beef with your brother, take it up with him. You and him, that's it. And if you can resolve it, hey. If you can't, bring a couple of witnesses along, and then let's see if that works. If that doesn't work, then you go to the church. So notice the kind of the continuing escalation, but the order is as minimal as it can be and as local to the problem as it can be before you go to remote. That's been the whole problem. The philosophical idiocy over the last, whatever it is, 30, 40, 50 years, the kind of imperial presidency, the federal government reigning over all, there's no room for local anything anymore.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And this is extremely refreshing to hear this kind of thinking being uttered aloud at the highest levels of our government. Another example, you had J.D. Vance attending the March for Life, and at which he openly declared, he said, I want more babies in this country. I mean, when was the last time you heard a politician, a Republican or Democrat, say anything like that?
When we're talking about all this, look at this article here from USA Today earlier in the week. I mean, the emergent Catholic right. That's what it is. And, I would go so far as to say it's not so much emergent anymore. I mean, they're sitting in the halls of power, laying out policies and things based on Catholic political philosophy, which of course is natural law. And, J.D. Vance is, just because he's the highest ranking politician in that whole cadre, is, kind of drawing a lot of the attention, and deservedly so. Seems to be it's pretty solid. Recent convert, still needs some, continuing formation, as we all do. But, hats off to JD so far.
Yeah, this is a really interesting article. I recommend that our viewers seek it out and read it. It's really enlightening, very, very interesting. And yeah, it describes this this conservative Catholic ethic that really is now in power in the halls of DC, and it's broadening. It's described as broadening its political horizons, but unwavering in its religious principles. And of course, J.D. Vance embodies it perfectly. Another person who is a reflection of that is Brian Birch of Catholic Vote, who's been picked by Trump to serve as the U.S. ambassador to the Holy See. And Birch describes this new ethic as a vision that proudly puts the needs and interests of Americans first, while pushing back against the secular, technocratic, and globalist agendas. And that's exactly what it is. That's what we see,
that's going to be interesting, that little, I don't know if I call it a war, but that little standoff. I believe the protocol, pretty sure the protocol is that the Vatican has to accept Birch's coming. You first of all, you pass muster in Congress, and then you get your papers, and then you present them to whatever country you're going to, in this case, the Holy See, and they have to be accepted. Your credentials have to be accepted. So that might be kind of a bit of an awkward moment for those running the Vatican temporarily.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the Birch is a sharp contrast to Biden's ambassador, who was pro-abortion, pro-LGBT. Remember, we had the rainbow flag flying outside the U.S. Embassy there in Rome. You won't be seeing that over the next 4 years, thanks be to God.
Hopefully 12.
Well, yeah, exactly, or more. But yeah, you see all of this kind of thing unfolding. The Birch being chosen as ambassador to the Holy See, you see that reflected internationally. Also internationally, the State Department's new focus on national sovereignty as opposed to globalism, which has been the reigning ethic for almost 40 years now here in the U.S.
Yeah, and John Paul, for people to remember, St. John Paul was dead set against globalism. He spoke of Europe as a culture, Catholic Western civilization culture, and he gave a tremendous speech. I can't remember what the occasion was, but he had he was backed up against the Atlantic Ocean. I believe he gave the speech in Portugal. It might have been northern Spain. I can't remember. But the backdrop was the Atlantic. And he said, Europe, rediscover yourselves from the Atlantic to the Urals, meaning Russia, the mountain range of mountains in Russia. That's, there's kind of a movement afoot. I think it's one thing is that, you live through all this kind of stuff. You're like, oh my gosh, Maranatha. And, God is, God's patient, and he moves pretty slowly by our reckoning sometimes. But the yeast has had a great deal of time to begin to rise. And that's really what you want. You want something that's built on a lasting foundation. And, he was dead set against globalism because he saw the problem with it, that, it could eventually be one world government that would enslave people. And he's right, because that's what the devil wants.
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because analysts, both Catholic and non-Catholic alike, looking at this new, this conservative Catholic ethic that's now sort of reigning supreme in DC, they note that this has the potential to spark monumental changes in social and cultural policy, and basically to revolutionize safeguards for religious liberty. And exactly what Satan doesn't want, because, you said, he wants to enslave us. They also note that this is undoubtedly going to spark further divisions within the church here in the United States, and perhaps even, kind of widen the gulf between the Catholic Church in the U.S. and that in Europe, that, the Vatican itself. Frankly, I'm fine with that. They're all,
yeah, not a problem. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. There are about 7 European Catholics left because they haven't fought back the way that they need to. And finally, we're finding our I guess our gumption again, our spark. And I tell you, it just feels so good. We've been managing decline both in the United States and in the church for a long time.
Our whole lifetimes, really. Our whole lifetimes has been
exactly.
that.
Right. And it is so energizing to.
It's interesting sort of watching the tides of history with this, as you kind of look at it, go back, a couple centuries, 3 centuries, and, there's the Protestant revolt 500 years ago. The part of Europe, the bottom 2/3 roughly closest to Rome geographically, remains Catholic. It's largely from those regions that the New World exploration begins happening. And the faith is transported all over the Western Hemisphere. Then, of course, you have the Puritans escaping what they thought was like this suppression because the Church of England, in their view, was at least looked too Catholic. Then, of course, there's the back and forth, the anti-Catholicism and all that. And you get this whole Catholic wave for roughly 75 years of immigration, which really does help sort of set the tone from a moral standpoint in the United States. And then, of course, the church becomes subverted here in the U.S. because of the liberal Protestant influence in Europe seeping into American seminaries and, European seminaries and religious houses and all that sort of thing. And then that gets transported over here. And now here we are at the point where, okay, that caused the sexual revolution and for the church to simply lay down its weapons. And here we are 60 years later, 70 years later, all that beginning to reverse itself. Hopefully that happens here in the U.S. And then with the tides of history, it washes back eastward across the Atlantic and fixes the church there. It's very interesting. Of course, you got all the third world countries with the churches where it's, that's like, United States Catholic Church in, like 1900, very devout, very solid, very all of that. It's just interesting watching. You really do have to have the perspective of time, long time, and good knowledge of history to see sort of the big meta trends, as they say in the political and social, research world. You have to see the meta trends, and the meta trends are trending towards Catholicism. Looks like in the end, it really will boil down to Catholicism versus atheism.
Yes, exactly. And the scenario that you outlined there, yes, obviously the faith is flourishing in Africa and Asia and whatnot. But again, the role of the United States is going to be critical because of just of our influence in the world, basically. Sure. And so if we can recover the church here, we can begin exporting that recovery, across the world, basically. And Europe has gone the way of atheism, but look at what that has done to their societies. Mm-hmm. I mean, as bad as things are here, they are 10 times worse over in Europe. And frankly, I think when a society begins to suffer enough, their eyes begin to open. Sure. And you see some of that happening now. Europe is beginning to stir. Certain societies there. I don't know if it's enough to mark a huge turnaround there at this point. I think maybe they have to suffer more, basically, just like we had to suffer under Biden and Harris. But anyway, it just kind of reaffirms this idea of the spiritual war that's going on. There's a battle for the soul of this country, because if this country is one for Christ, if it is one for the church, we can be a remarkable shining light for the rest of the world.
Yeah, imagine America sending missionaries back to Ireland 20 years from now.
Yeah.
Like, wow, listen, you talk about coming full circle. Mm-hmm. One of the things, of course, as we talk about, Catholic social philosophy, I suppose you could say, is the importance, again, from Scripture, St. Paul, your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. And while RFK Jr., you certainly wouldn't hold him up as a model Catholic, he's still espousing Catholic principles regarding, the duty to be healthy, to treat your body as a temple of the Holy Spirit. Of course, that can go overboard, but, everything can go overboard one way or the other. So, striking the balance here. And when we were all watching the confirmation hearings 2 days ago, the hypocrisy of the Democrats was insane, Stephen. It was off the charts, screaming and yelling at him. And that one exchange with Elizabeth Warren, I want you to tell me you're not going to sue them. You're going to drive the pharmaceutical companies bankrupt. Really? Are you expecting a couple $1 trillion award, from a jury? Right. Drive the pharmaceuticals bankrupt? What?
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, Bernie Sanders barking at him about onesies. I mean, it was like catching a glimpse into a lunatic asylum. It was just unbelievable. I cannot imagine that it's going to go down well with the Democratic base. It was just so absurd. And what's interesting is among the senators that were there, those who were, everyone, on the Democratic side, none of them were what I would say stellar in their performance, but those who were more unhinged, well, it turns out they have received more money from Big Pharma, the pharmaceutical industry. We have a tweet here.
Really?
Yeah, shocker.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. So they're screaming against him wanting to reform the pharmaceutical dependence of the United States, but they're also getting paid by, huge sums of money by the pharmaceutical companies? That can't be true. Right. Show me some receipts, Stephen.
Yeah. All right. Yes. This is what's so great about social media. Yeah. Someone will declare something, people watching, they'll just start diving right in, conducting their own research, digging up the facts, and then they'll post it, 10 minutes later. And this is what happened with this during the hearing. Basically, someone brought up these figures and posted them to X. They said the hostility Robert Kennedy Jr. experienced at his hearing was directly proportional to how much pharma money each senator received. And let's look here. Top of the list, good, Democratic Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. He's received $1.953 million, almost $2 million from Big Pharma. Raphael Warnock, Senator.
Hold on a second, Stephen, for a moment on Bernie Sanders. Let's come back here for a second. Bernie Sanders, Kennedy challenged him and said, there's corruption all over the place with this stuff, and even certainly in Congress, and frankly, even with members of this panel, as Senator. I think he just called him Bernie, and at least one time he did. And Sanders got immediately. He goes, "No, that's not true. I knew this was going to go there." Well, why did you think it was going to go there? And he said, my 2020 campaign running for president, I took no money from it. It wasn't about the, notice how he completely deflected and gaslighted. Okay, maybe he didn't take big PAC money in his presidential campaign, but he has been on the pharmaceutical dole for years. And as you see there, did his campaign take the money? No. Then why is he taking the money at all from them? $2 million. He's top of the list. He's not the only one high up there, but he's top of the list. And boy, did he get defensive immediately. And he deflected to, it was a campaign. We're talking about the campaign. We're talking about money given to you and your office across the board, for whatever uses you may want to use. I mean, give me a break here. Bernie Sanders, please, you're raging hypocrite. You always going, we got to tax the rich. Well, why don't you just give up 2 of your 4 houses and just, give those to illegal immigrants?
Yep, exactly. Good socialist Sanders. And same kind of thing with Senator Raphael Warnock out of Georgia. He's received more than $1.76 million from Big Pharma. Now, Warnock was actually his entire campaign. The reason he's a senator now in Georgia is because RFK's vice presidential running mate, Nicole Shanahan, she actually bankrolled his campaign back in 2020. And of course, she regrets that terribly now. But he came out and said he would vote no against RFK's confirmation. And so she's just flat out said she's going to wage war against him. And a lot of her allies are lining up right behind her. So there's hopefully we won't see Senator Warnock the next time around here.
And you know, it's interesting. It's interesting when you're when you see some of the sound bites. And you know, they post their videos on X or whatever and say, "No, you're a traitor," and all that and everything. But it's interesting when you see the interviews. Like, you know, she went on Fox News, and it's interesting. And as have many other mothers, specific about the RFK thing, regardless of their political leanings. You know, far right, far left, somewhere in between. You know, some of the younger moms, you know, meaning like under 45-ish or so, who still have children at home, are like, I mean, they're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, here we are again, common sense, natural law, maternal care for children. And they're saying, I want to know what's going into my, you know, the food, what's going into the bodies that I'm feeding my children. What's all this stuff about, you know, what you're going to inoculate them with and shoot in their arm? I want to know what's going on. These are my children. And she said all of that in an interview. It's a separate video than the one that we showed yesterday with her, like saying, "We're coming after you, Warnock and all the rest of you." It's again, it's the ascendancy of natural law. You know, a mother who loves her children wants to know, as a father does too, but these are, for the most part, moms who are talking out and giving these interviews. You know, they're saying, "Get your hands off my children." I mean, that's right. When we think about that sort of big overarching thing, that's behind the transgender stuff in the bathrooms. That's behind the fight against, you know, men and women's sports. That's about, you know, the whole thing here with the whole, you know, we need to get this whole health thing under control. It's a health crisis. That's the immigration thing. You know, almost all of the people killed were women, young women, or, you know, young girls who were raped and stabbed, like here in Houston, murdered and thrown under a bridge, underpass. So, you know, where's all the women's rights stuff now? Well, again, there's kind of a new movement that is being given birth on like women's rights, and it's protecting their children, which is the antithesis of the women's lib movement from the 1960s, 70s, and everywhere. The rallying cry was, "Kill my children, my body, my choice." You're seeing the whole big shift here. And it's moms who love their children and want them protected from whatever it is that the government does or allows, immigration, illegal immigration, you know, women's sports, all of it. And I got to say, it's really quite refreshing. You can't point to something more Catholic than that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, RFK, during his testimony, he flat out called it. He declared this a moral and spiritual issue. And he was speaking literally, you know, in terms of morality, the way we understand it, not some, you know, abstract philosophical concept. This is a moral issue. And he's totally right. You know, I was thinking, you know, you look at the Democratic, just the ideology, their program. I mean, it can just be summed up with how many ways can you destroy a child? You know, they're pro-abortion, they're pro-mutilation. And now, as we see with these serpents in the Senate, they're pro, you know, poisoning your child with bad food, with vaccines, whatever, you know, quote unquote vaccines. Yeah. It's just, you know, everything that they are all about just seems to, when you boil it down, it seems to be an assault on the child, an assault on human dignity, especially
exactly scriptural. From the Garden of Eden, I will put enmity between you and the woman, her offspring and yours, and then move forward 73 books to the 73rd book. Yes, 73 total books, not 66. And, you know, what happens? The woman gives birth to the child. He's snatched up to heaven. She's pushed off into, you know, secluded away in the desert in a place God prepared for her. And what is the serpent, the devil, left with? Making war on the children of the woman. And in this case, literal war on the children. And, you know, there's lots of symbolism in this here. You know, what is the... You know, Our Lady, obviously, she's the mother of God. She's right here, mother of God. But she's also the mother of the brothers and sisters of Christ, the people who Christ has redeemed and saved. She's the Queen of Heaven. She's the mother of God. She's our mother. And all of this is this kind of, it's almost like a bit like of a vaporous cloud you almost aren't aware of unless you're attuned to it, of Catholic principles, religious as well as temporal, just kind of rolling slowly across the cultural landscape. And it's impacting everything. And it doesn't matter whether these women, individual women, who are, Nicole Shanahan, doesn't matter if she's saying, oh, well, I'm a Catholic, it has nothing to do with it. The point is they're responding to the natural law as well they should. And that's what's been insane in these last 60-ish years or so. It's been like the natural law is stupid, it's oppressive, it's a patriarchy, it's this, it's racist, it's homophobe, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no. And it's unfortunately taken 2 or 3 generations for so many people to suffer at the hands of that, kingdom of oppression. But as always happens, they did push too far. And so here we are. Having Senate confirmation hearings, calling out the hypocrisy of senators, getting rich off other people's, poor health, attacking them. And we're going to step away here for one quick second, Stephen. When we come back, we're talking about all the other fireworks. Same thing, same Catholic principles at work in the confirmations hearings. Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel. This is it's glorious to behold. It really is. We'll be right back right after this.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 6-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sailed because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
All right, we're back. If you like what we do here and you like this kind of analysis that goes deeper than just, hey, here's the policy and here's what's going on, here's the fireworks, but analyzes deeply the reasons behind it, please feel free to click on that donate button and help us out. Stephen, I mean, we all wanted Trump to win, and that's it. We knew the stuff would come like this. But, it's one thing to kind of imagine what it would look like. It's an entirely different thing to actually watch it happening. And that's what's going on right now. It's like, yeah!
Yeah. It's amazing. And this week has been just particularly fascinating, just to see some of the more controversial appointees come before the Senate committee, for their hearing, and hopefully after that a vote. Yesterday we saw Tulsi Gabbard, another like Trump, like Elon, like RFK, another disaffected Democrat who has enough natural virtue, enough common sense, enough goodwill that they have seen the light. They've seen where their party, their former party fellows have just absolutely lost their way, lost their minds. And so they've left and they've come over to embrace the GOP, the MAGA movement. Really, really refreshing. And so Tulsi is Trump's pick to serve as Director of National Intelligence. And I tell you, we've got a couple of clips that we want to play.
She just ripped them apart in her opening statement.
Awesome.
I mean, she tore them to shreds.
Oh, it was just so awesome. I sat there listening to her, and we hear all these charges from the Democrats. Oh, Kamala wasn't elected because the Republicans are misogynists. They hate women. They don't want a strong woman. Give me a break. I tell you what, I would follow that woman into battle any day. She is like the contrast.
Well, wait a minute, Steve. Wait. The media and the Democrats are telling us Trump only surrounds himself with weak, dumb women. Well, are you saying that she's an exception?
She is one of among many, actually. If you actually look at who Trump is surrounding himself with, and the contrast between her and Kamala just couldn't be more stark. She just performed brilliantly. So we have one clip that we want to play where she basically addresses the incredible loss of trust, the loss of faith that Americans have in their institutions, especially as those have manifested in a loss of trust in our intelligence services, basically the FBI, CIA. It is critical that we have trust in these institutions, or otherwise this nation isn't going to thrive. Let's take a listen to what she said. She provides a really good review of these massive failures, violations, really, of the American trust over the past several years under Biden and beyond. Let's take a listen.
Trust in the intelligence community, unfortunately, is at an all-time low. Chuck Schumer admitted a few years ago, quote, "You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you." For too long, faulty, inadequate, or weaponized intelligence have led to costly failures and the undermining of our national security and God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution. The most obvious example of one of these failures is our invasion of Iraq, based upon a total fabrication or complete failure of intelligence. This disastrous decision led to the deaths of tens of thousands of American soldiers, millions of people in the Middle East, mass migration, destabilization, and undermining of the security and stability of our European allies, the rise of ISIS, strengthening of Al-Qaeda and other Islamist jihadist groups, and strengthening Iran. Here are just a few other examples. The American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once but twice, and yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation, specifically to help Biden win the election. Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records, yet was never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end. President Trump's re-election is a clear mandate from the American people to break this cycle of failure, end the weaponization and politicization of the intelligence community, and begin to restore trust in those who've been charged with the critical task of securing our nation.
Kaboom. Kaboom.
Yeah,
I think it's really funny.
Exactly.
Here she is sitting there talking about having to dismantle, the criminal state, and telling that to the criminals who established it. And, oh, by the way, can you please vote for me? I mean, the irony of this is like beyond rich.
Yeah, it is. It is. And yeah, just like Trump did during his inaugural address, parading Biden and Harris's failures before them as they sat 4 feet away. Tulsi had the gumption to do that, talking about the weaponization of intelligence, lawfare, the loss of freedom, of course, the targeting of Catholics, all of that, all of those abuses happening here at home. And then, the catastrophic Iraq war, the empowerment of Iran, the loss of Afghanistan, disastrous pullout there.
The spreading of the caliphate, ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Hamas and all of it. I mean, that's all laid at the feet of those types of politicians.
Yes, exactly. And again, she's all about restoring trust to among the American people in our intelligence services. But she understands that can only happen really if that trust is earned, and she's all about earning that trust back.
Yeah, she really is. It's tremendous. I think we had another soundbite over here as well, just saying, kind of more of the same. But I mean, look at her composure, and
right.
It's
and what I love,
and when you contrast her with like Elizabeth Warren, and
yes.
all of them, Patty Murray, and here she is sitting here just calm, cool, collected, but absolutely determined. Wow. I mean, it's quite the coolness. Let's take a look real quick.
In my meetings that I've had with many of you, you expressed bipartisan frustration about recent intelligence failures, as well as the lack of responsiveness to your requests for information. Whether it's the surprise October 7th Hamas terrorist attack, to the sudden takeover of Syria by Islamist extremists, failures to identify the source of COVID, anomalous health incidents, UAPs, drones, and more. If confirmed, I look forward to working with you to address these issues. Now, before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home. You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that will challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States, accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The same tactic was used against President Trump and failed. The American people elected President Trump with a decisive victory and mandate for change. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet.
Yeah, that's been the knock in the media and everything about her, that, oh, she's just a puppet, she was, friends with Assad and all of that. And of course, we're out on social media today. You see a picture of Nancy Pelosi sitting there with Assad in Syria, in Damascus. Social media is destroying the empire of lies of the left. And that's why they're in a tailspin. They don't know what to do. And for the fact, and going back to the Kennedy thing, for him to accuse Bernie Sanders of essentially, being in Big Pharma's pocket because of the $2 million he's gotten from them over the last few years, and the hypocrisy, not even hypocrisy, the absurdity of Elizabeth Warren saying, "You're not going to sue, you're going to drive the pharmaceutical companies bankrupt." All of it. Anybody sitting watching these things who's, the kind of that middleman sort of person has got to be like, wow. And then Tulsi gets up there, Pam Bondi gave it back to them also. But these are strong, determined women, informed at the very least by natural law principles as they are enunciated by the Catholic Church. And it's a glory to behold.
Yeah, exactly. And I just love the fact that she basically wrapped up her opening comments, by speaking directly to the American people. It's basically saying, look, you're all about to hear a bunch of BS about me. I just want to put you on notice. It's total garbage. And, at the same time, she's telling the people that, she's telling these corrupt senators, I know you, I see you, I know what you're all about. And, that's intimidating, to them, I think. And so it's just, I don't know, it's just very, very cool. So we've got to pray that she gets in, because man, she would be stellar for this country. She's exactly what that office needs.
Well, that's why this business of what's going on behind the scenes and out in front, with Nicole Shanahan saying, you vote against Kennedy and these people and stuff like that, I'm going to chop your heads off. I have billions of dollars and I will destroy you in the upcoming primaries. What would work is that they don't get in. And then Trump works out with either Thune or Johnson to, split Congress and then, call a recess and appoint him anyway. And I believe the term of the appointment is, it's 240 days. And then reconvene Congress. Now here they are acting as that. And then wipe these people out in the primaries. Primary the
Yes.
the Warnocks and all, just primary them all. And, I've got to imagine Trump somewhere along the line is either on the phone or having meetings or something and saying, you've got a choice here. These are my nominees. Look at the 78 million people here who voted for all of this. Do you really think North Carolina Senator, Republican Rhino, Tom Tillis, do you really think that I won't own you and drive you out of office in the primaries in a little over a year? Do you really think that's not going to happen?
Yeah. Another person that we really need to get in is Kash Patel, who is Trump's pick for head of the FBI. Of course, a massive bureaucracy that has gone completely off the rails and really has been weaponized against the American people. It's truly become spooky in recent years.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got to have someone who at the helm who is full of integrity, totally committed to the Constitution, and I think Patel will be that man.
Yeah, they certainly don't want. When you look at the big picture, it's kind of obvious what's going on. These are the architects of this empire of evil and perversion of the United States, and the clock is ticking on them. And it's not quite a stalemate right now. It's a little bit of a stalemate because included in all of those Democrats are also some enabling deep state Republicans like Mitch McConnell and that sort of crowd. I can't remember if Mitch McConnell's announced or not announced he's going to run for re-election. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? You can't even stand up. You keep falling over. You're going to, and that's like, election in roughly 20 months, 22 months, whatever it is. And then you're going to serve another 6 years. Dude, I mean,
Right.
You look like you're in worse shape than Biden. As does Ron Wyden from Oregon. But you look at this and you're saying, all these Republicans in there who are kind of milquetoasty, personal gain. They don't want to be being investigated by a Pam Bondi run Department of Justice with a Kash Patel run FBI under the under the Department of Justice. They don't want any of that going on. That's crazy. But I'd like to look at this as more of kind of a hearings on their credibility really than the nominees, because these nominees are not letting them off the hook. It's almost like, they've got the floor and they get to talk for 5 minutes or 6 minutes, whatever, until the gavel drops and they move on to the next person. But this is really more of a damning thing about them. And if you can just hear political operatives sitting around saying, grab that soundbite for the next campaign ad, grab that soundbite, get that one. I mean, they certainly are going to be spoiled for choice.
No, they are.
Yeah, let's take a listen. Let's take a listen and
yeah.
see what. Let's watch one of those spunky little Kash soundbites in the middle of all this. Let's roll it.
He is asking to be head of the FBI, and he said that their headquarters should be shut down.
Mr. Chair, parliamentary inquiry.
You got anything you want to say, Mr. Patel, before I go on to Senator Lee?
Simply this. If the best attacks on me are going to be false accusations and grotesque mischaracterizations, the only thing this body is doing is defeating the credibility of the men and women at the FBI. I stood with them here in this country. In every theater of war we have, I was on the ground in service of this nation. And any accusations leveled against me that I would somehow put political bias before the Constitution are grotesquely unfair. And I will have you reminded that I have been endorsed by over 300,000 law enforcement officers to become the next director of the FBI. Let's ask them.
All right, yeah, I love that. Again, just like Tulsi, he would not yield an inch. And Amy Klobuchar, Democrat from Minnesota, pearl clutching, going into histrionics, just like Warren, just like all the other these fools that we see on the Senate committee there. But he's standing his ground. He's not going to let his name or his integrity be besmirched because of a political agenda. And again, I just think that's exactly what we need as head of the FBI.
Absolutely, hands down. And then when he the kind of back and forth between him and Trump's nominees are sitting accusing them of lacking the necessary integrity to actually vote on them. I mean, that's really what's going on. It's like, wow, holy crap. And you can see the arrogance just dripping. Let's just watch this brief little exchange here.
In the collective, all of those statements are taken out of grotesque context. And anyone that thinks my 16 years of service isn't exemplary on how I would proceed if confirmed as FBI is intentionally putting false information into the public ether and creating more public discourse. The only thing that will matter if I'm confirmed as a director of the FBI is a de-weaponized, depoliticized system of law enforcement completely devoted to rigorous obedience of the Constitution and a singular standard of justice.
Yeah, again, just the basically the courage to openly declare that he's not going to allow the weaponization of the FBI anymore, to the very faces of those who have allowed it, who have promoted it. It's awesome. And
another thing that's kind of cool about this, if they don't get the necessary votes because they cave to their other pressures and their anti-American, their globalist agenda, and all that stuff and everything. The people who the provision of how this works is that until there is actually a confirmed agency head or department head, there's an acting department head. That person does not need Senate confirmation because the understanding is they're just kind of keeping the seat warm until the actual nominee who's now confirmed comes in. In the meantime, who do they think Trump is putting in those temporary positions? I mean, it certainly didn't stop, the fact that Pam Bondi has not been confirmed, if she is, as the Attorney General, U.S. Attorney General, hasn't stopped the firing of 93 federal prosecutors from every single prosecution district, hasn't stopped the firing of the inspector generals, the 17 of them, I believe it was. All that's going on. It's just going on. So I'm kind of wondering and Trump has that recess appointment in his back pocket. It's just still sitting there. Trump's going to get his way one way or the other. So I'm not sure exactly what the strategy is here, except to just vent like a demon being exorcised out of a body and screaming and carrying on. And even if they don't get the necessary votes, they miss by a vote or two, that will be because of turncoat Republicans, rhino Republicans, who will pay the price in 20 months.
Yes, they will.
Actually, before that, probably 18, about 16 months, actually. That will be... Trump's going to get his way with this one way or the other. And he has the highest popularity ranking right now of any president in his second term, surpassing his first term popularity. He's got a lot of political capital, and he's going to spend it. And good for him. That's what we elected him for. One guy I do want to focus on is, we watched Pete Hegseth. I've never heard of a daily video. It's not even a briefing, like announcement. It's like a public service announcement from the Department of Defense. Yeah. Hegseth did that. I think he was probably going to do it anyway, but then, of course, the horrible, tragic crash over the Potomac at Reagan International between the chopper and the American Airlines flight. He also talked about that, gave us all the update and everything we need to know. Trump came out with his press conference yesterday and just said, here's what we know. Here's my speculation, probably well-founded speculation if the president of the United States, based on the knowledge you have that others might not yet. The transparency that is permeating these first week or two has been incredible. Let's listen to Pete Hegseth, and I want to hear what you got to say about it. Pete.
All right, update this morning. Just got off the phone with the Southcom commander and the chairman, the Joint Chiefs, talking about our efforts at Guantanamo Bay. That is ongoing. We're leaning forward on supporting the president's directive to make sure that we have a location for violent criminal illegals as they are deported out of the country. No one's going to wait on the Defense Department, and we're working that in real time. But I also wanted to give an update on the tragedy that happened last night here in Washington, D.C., and provide a little bit more information as we are actively working to investigate and understand what occurred and why. At about 8:48 last night, a UH-60 assigned to the U.S. Army Aviation Brigade in the Military District of Washington. Fort Belvoir, Virginia collided tragically with a civilian airliner. The unit involved, the Army unit involved, was Bravo Company 12th Aviation Battalion at Fort Belvoir. It was an annual proficiency training flight. And when we look at the crew, and not all kin have been notified, so we're going to withhold ranks and names at this point. We do know on our side who was involved. It was a fairly experienced crew, and that was doing a required annual night evaluation. They did have night vision goggles. The 12th Aviation Battalion, as of now, is granted a 48-hour operational pause on contingency missions as what happened is reviewed, and a senior level aviation team, an investigative team from our Aviation Safety Center, was deployed last night and already is in Washington, D.C. to investigate what's going on. We anticipate that the investigation will quickly be able to determine whether the aircraft was in the corridor and at the right altitude at the time of the incident. As I mentioned, next of kin notifications are ongoing. It's a tragedy, a horrible loss of life for those 64 souls on that civilian airliner, and of course, the 3 soldiers in that Black Hawk. They're in our prayers, their families and their communities as people are notified. I can't imagine. And I know it's gone from a rescue mission to a recovery mission, and we're with all the first responders that are moving actively too. So at the Defense Department, our thoughts and prayers go out. We are actively investigating to find out what happened and why. And as we get updates, you will have them. God bless.
That's it's quite the impressive. And he ends, God bless. Somebody else I know does that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I as you said, it's it's unbelievable. It's an act of transparency, and it is so refreshing to have someone do that. You know, it's just, I don't know, it brings us closer to them and him closer to us, really. And it's good to hear what he's focusing on and whatnot. Obviously, you can't do that with every little detail, but it's just, it provides a window into what's on his calendar, what's on his schedule, what he's tackling. And I think that's great. I really, really like that. I agree. You've not seen that before. This is something new, and I love it. Great.
I wonder, just as we wrap up here, there's just a few seconds left, but I wonder how many of them are sort of quaking in their boots going back to the Kash Patel hearing when he said, yeah, I'm going to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. They must have been like, what the hell did he just say? Did he? What? What? And I'm sure all their phones were going off, getting texts from everybody on the list going, vote against this man. Do not let this guy win. Or we're going to destroy the I mean, why would you want to be, I'm talking about being caught between a rock and a hard place. If you're a Democratic senator or rhino, you've got all the people who are, feeding you and controlling you with the campaign donations and all of that. And then you've got all the, the Trump people saying, we're going to primary your butt and everything else. And you got all these threats from every single direction. Just retire. Why don't you just retire and put in somebody who, that's what we're trying to do, isn't it?
Yep.
All right, Stephen, we're out of time again for today, but these are great conversations. They really are. A great look-ats from spiritual directions. Again, that's why we call ourselves Souls and Liberty. If you like how we do things here, please just click on the donate button on the page you're watching. Keep us able to keep doing this, and we're much appreciated for it. In the meantime, Stephen, thank you once again for all your really, really good insights.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, that wraps us up for today. That's all we got. I'm Gary Michael Vorse coming to you from Houston, Texas. Join me. Yeehaw! God love you.